I wish there were more resources about local CODA programs in your area.